I've been at WF Meyers for almost 15 years, and I've been the president for over 13 at this point. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I'd do a lot of things differently, and today I'm going to cover those. But first, I'd like to ask you to take a quick second to subscribe to my channel. I put out new content every Friday. If you're in the stone business, it's going to be relevant for you. So, if I had to go back and do it all over again, what would I change? What would I do differently? So the first thing that I would do differently might sound a little counterintuitive, but the first thing I would do would be nothing. I would simply observe. I would watch the business run for 3 months before changing a single thing. I'd document, I'd take notes for sure, but I wouldn't make any changes for 90 days. And the reason I say that is something was working when I got here. The business had products, had customers, had well established relationships. So something was working. It didn't all need to get torn down to the studs, so to speak. So I needed to do a better job of taking time to take it all in, assess what was going on, and then make a plan moving forward. Now, looking back on that, it's hard to be too critical. I came into the president's chair when I was 29 years old, eager to prove how smart I was, prove how much I knew. Not very much in hindsight. And I think humans have a bias towards action. I think that, I would have thought at the time, I'm coming in and I'm not doing anything. That's not what people are going to expect of me. But looking back, ultimately, I think that would have been a smarter starting point for me. One of the other things that I would have done a lot earlier in hindsight is get a 13-week rolling cash flow forecast. For years, I managed the finances on vibes, and that's not really the way to do it. If we had money in, great, we can pay bills, we can set some aside for later, we can do, something else with it. If we didn't have money, well, I guess we're waiting. So a 13-week cash flow forecast is a tool that lets you know, okay, these are the good weeks, these are the bad weeks, here's where the holes are going to be. So you can kind of see the bumps in the road coming before you hit them. And that is something I do now, only because I've been burned by doing it the wrong way, which is going off of vibes or gut feel or, how much money is on our bank account today. All of those are very poor ways to manage your finances as a business. Another kind of odd thing that I would do differently going back is I would embrace pessimism. I tend to be a bit of an optimist by nature. I tend to assume things are going to get better, things are going to improve, business is going to grow, everything's just going to get better and better, right? Well, maybe it will, but not necessarily. And I think that, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would plan, what happens if if we lose a customer? What happens if, we see something crazy and unprecedented like a global pandemic? What happens if our sales are cut by 50% overnight due to something completely outside of my control that I can't plan for? Those are the kind of downsides. That's the kind of pessimism that I don't think you should wallow around in it, but definitely take some time and be intentional about planning. What would you do if something like that were to happen? One other thing that I would have done differently, if I had to do it all over again, is I would intentionally do less. When I got to WF Meyers, we had 5 product lines. Now we have 3. And we cut 2 during COVID. I probably should have cut them earlier. But the fact of the matter is we were trying to do too much. And kind of like I said earlier, I think we as humans have a bias towards solving problems through addition. If I add one more customer, if I add one more product, if I add one more thing that I add on top is going to fix the problem, when in reality, a lot would be solved if we had subtracted some things earlier. Now, I eventually did it during COVID because my hand was forced, but we carried some product lines that were a little outdated and a little unproductive for us for too long. And if I had to do it over again, I'd do less, but do it better. This one won't be surprising for anybody who knows me or has ever spent 5 minutes in a room with me. I needed to learn how to communicate. I probably still need to learn how to communicate. But man, when I was 29, I was really awful. Way too blunt, way too matter of fact. and didn't understand that everybody moves at their own pace, everybody has their own communication style, everyone has their own preference as far as how much detail they want. All of that was really lost on me until we got Culture Index, which really kind of opened my eyes as to how different people are wired differently and what that means for me as a leader, and how I communicate with them. You know, generally speaking, most of my people wanted more detail and a more, step by step plan from me on where are we going, why are we going there, and how is it exactly that we're going to get there. And they'd want that broken down into a level of granularity that was different than what I was comfortable with. You know, if I'm comfortable with, yeah, that's where we're going, we'll get there. Um, most people want to see a couple more stops on the route, so to speak, and there's not a thing wrong with that. And again, if I had to go back and do it all over again, um, I would have been a little bit more sensitive to how other people need to communicate and receive information in order to manage change better. One other thing I would do differently, I would not pursue growth for growth's sake. Growth with a plan is great. Growth just for the sake of growing doesn't make any sense. You got to be really intentional about why are you doing it. And so we added products, we added people, we added, things that we thought speculatively this could pan out for us in the future. And really all that did was add complexity, make things harder to manage, add add to our headcount, add people who I then ended up laying off, and it made the business weaker. So growth can be good. Growth can also be a stressor. It can also be negative. And if the business is working just fine, really think about why are we growing? What's the purpose? Is it just to feed my ego, like it was in my case? Or is there a real compelling business reason to do what we're doing here? I've learned a lot in my time at WF Meyers. In the 15 years I've been here, I've learned a ton of stuff. And if I had to do it all over again, these are the big ones. Like I've mentioned, I would take some more time to get a full understanding of the business before making any changes. I would do a better job of managing our cash flow. I would embrace pessimism and look for the downside risk and figure out what we would do in case of an emergency. I would do less as far as our products and services, but perform at a higher level. And I would learn how to better communicate with my team and meet them where they are instead of where I am. And I would also avoid growth just for growth's sake. So I put out a new video every Friday. If you're in the stone business, I talk about topics that are relevant to what you're doing. And if you find this helpful, please take a quick second, subscribe to my channel. It's super helpful, doesn't cost you anything, and I appreciate it. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'll catch you next time.